Hi, John. How you doing? I'm super excited to have you on.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, lovely to join you. My first ever podcast. So looking forward to it, mate.
Yeah, this is awesome. So, everyone, we've got John McArthur from Banana Feeds Australia. Now, we're going to be talking about an amazing product and very, very interesting because a lot of beekeepers know about, obviously, bananas can make the bees possibly edgy. There's a bit of different rules of thought there, but we've got a special feed. So, tell us all about it, John. How did it all start?
Oh, Ben, it's been an awesome journey, to be honest. When we first, so there's myself and my business partner, Robert Passade. Well, as it turns out, 1 week prior to the COVID restrictions coming into play, we launched our business whereby we built a factory up in Cairns where we take what is the downgraded product essentially that would normally go to Coles and Woolworths. And we were trying to find, my business partner's a third generation banana grower. And he and I worked together for some sort of 15 years together. And we were both quite, I suppose, sick of seeing high quality product ending up downgraded because it wasn't meeting the human specifications. So we sort of decided that we would look further afield to find alternative uses and to value add this product that has cost so much money to grow. So we actually ended up starting by investigating different species, and we started looking at equine to begin with, just because we both had a bit of a passion for that. And what we found is that there was no research anywhere in Australia about dry green bananas and its application to a variety of different species. We found some interesting research models on reducing ulceration in rats, but that's not a particularly sexy discussion point when you're talking about $1 million racehorses and dressage and show jumping horses. So we also found that it was really good at reducing the mortality rate of weanling piglets, which again wasn't particularly interesting given the field that we were trying to work in. And we also found that it was really good in the prevention of mastitis on dairy cattle. So what we ended up doing is we engaged a group, and I'm not sure whether you've heard of it, Ben, but it's the Fight Food Waste. It's a CRC, yep. And basically, we had some match funding from the CRC to do a research project with the University of Adelaide down here. And what we were trying to do is understand the product and the potential benefits it would bring to not only equine, but other species as well. But this one was particularly, I suppose, focused on equine. And with that $100,000 project that we ended up putting together, we analysed the product. So we put it through the laboratories, the South Australian Research Development Institute. They did all the aminos and they did all the polyphenols and the flavonoid analysis, the sugar content and all those sort of things. So once we sort of understood our product pretty well, the factory was completed. We brought a lot of equipment in from overseas because it wasn't available here in Australia. And we set about trying to take a green banana that had been potentially, downgraded through slight skin markings, wrong shape, too fat singles, whatever the case might be, and turn it into a product that we knew had application. But at that particular point, we were still, on the early phases of understanding which species it would be best suited for. So that was pretty. Sorry,
John. How long ago was this?
So we did that in 2019, towards the end of 2019.
Okay. Yep.
And we commercially launched our business in, I suppose, February, which was literally 1 week before the COVID restrictions came in. Yep. So when you're dealing with a world first product, and it hasn't been done before anywhere else. So when you're dealing with a product that you're trying to get out and tell people about for the first time, travel is pretty important. And unfortunately, we couldn't actually travel. So we had some reps who were, in each state, and they weren't able to go out and see customers. Robert and myself, as two business partners, didn't actually see each other for the first 12 months. So that was a challenge in itself. But lo and behold, we started, it sort of spread a little bit like coronavirus, to be perfectly honest. We started in the equine market and we put some product out into the market and it just took off. So that was fantastic. And then, so the equine product was where we first commenced. And we've now had, some fantastic results in that market. We have, we've had Blue Diamond State winners. We've had some, it's been a great result. And then we had some canine owners, some greyhound trainers, and some big breeders who were walking out with our horse product because they understood the benefits of the product and what it can do for gut health. So we ended up introducing a canine product. And that's been going exceptionally well as well. So if anyone out there has a dog, green banana, our supplement, honestly, it's quite transformational as to what it can do for the gut health of dogs, and improving their coat health and their gut health, and also, if they've got any skin ailments, or if they're a little bit bit anxious, it can certainly help with that as well. And that all comes back to, I'll come back to the reasons why that has helped those species. But then getting on to the important part about the bees, we were sitting there concentrating on our equine and our canine, and we had a phone call and a bit of a connection with a company down in Tasmania, Stevens Apiarist. And that had some history with green bananas, putting them in the bottom of hives, not quite understanding, the mechanisms of why it was working, but it seemed to have a benefit for them. So they asked us to produce our product. Comes probably more like a muesli consistency for the equine, because they like to chew on it, and it helps them with their developing their salivary reactions and all the rest of it. But they asked us to put some into a powder, which we duly did, and we sent some down to them. And as a third generational sort of very professional outfit, the feedback they gave us just was quite overwhelming. And that led us to think, right, we need to do a little bit more work in this. So it was sort of a product that was, I suppose, born from the industry, with the probably not the depth of understanding as to why it would work. But certainly, the feedback was just phenomenal as far as the reduction of chalk brood, but also just colony health and strength. And to be honest, their reports were they used it on their weakest performing hives, and those hives actually ended up being some of their better performing hives. So we were pretty buoyed by that sort of feedback, particularly because they're such a well-regarded business, been doing it a long time. And then we were flat out. We're only a small business, so we were flat out doing our equine and our canine development. And it sort of spread, and then the next person heard about it, and then the next person heard about it. And before we knew it, we had inquiries from Canada over in the canola fields over there about the opportunity to potentially export this product further afield. And so we got a little bit more serious about it. We certainly undertook some desktop studies, tried to find out what there was out there in the field, and we again, very limited information out there, but we did come across a couple of papers. I think one was a Korean paper, and another one was from the States, and they sort of delved a little bit deeper into some of the potential modes of activity that was creating this benefit in the hives. And from there we sort of went and spoke to a couple of, probably, we like to deal with really professional and very well-regarded individuals in any industry we deal with. So I went and spoke to a gentleman by the name of Trevor Monson. Trevor's well-regarded, and we took a sample up there, and I actually left it with him. And then he rang me when I'd sort of 20 minutes after I'd left. He rang me and said, "You got to come back and have a chat to me, because what I'm seeing is sort of not quite." I can't quite believe what I'm seeing. So I went back and we had a chat, and and Trevor's been around a long time and he's seen a lot of things, but he was really quite taken aback by the activity that was going on. So I sort of started using him as a bit of a sounding board to understand what the bananas were offering, potentially his colonies. Then we've sort of done some trial work with another young fella down here in South Australia. Although our factory is actually up in Cairns, I live in South Australia. My business partner lives in Cairns, and we sort of travel far and wide. So we're never actually in one state all the time. We're just constantly trying to move again now that we can. So a young fella, Jake Farquhar, he's got some hives down around that Victor Harbour area. And again, same feedback, just phenomenal. Chalk brood all cleaned up. And I guess we then spoke to a couple of other people, spoke to a distributor, because to be perfectly honest, we're not apiarists. We never have professed to be apiarists. So anyone out there who wants the real technical stuff, that's probably not my gig. But what we are finding is that sometimes it takes a business that's come from a different background to bring a new product into these sort of industries. And the same thing with the equine.
Exactly.
Absolutely, and I guess so many people work so deeply in the industry they don't have time to look outside the field. Whereas both Robert and I have come from the horticultural sector, and we know bananas back to front because that's all we've done.
Yes.
We've grown them, we've marketed them, we've researched them, we've looked at alternative varieties. We've done a lot of work in that space. So when it came to developing this product, we were never going to profess to be the experts. We were always going to use people within the industry to provide real-time feedback from what they're seeing, so that we know it's real. We didn't look for the people who would give us what we wanted to hear. We went to some of the, probably the most skeptical, but also some of the most probably well-regarded and hands-on, because again, we found that with the horse industry that, there are some really large trainers who don't necessarily, they might have too many horses to really understand it, but the feedback we get from those who are on those horses every day, they can really see the differences. And so we figured the same philosophy we could apply to the bee industry, find people who are hands-on, know their stuff, and let them use a product and see what they saw. So, again, I think by doing that, it really did give us quite an amazing amount of feedback in the positive realm. And from that, we then had a chat to a distributor at a Swan Hill, and we've sort of just kept on moving forward with it. And like I said, I mean, it's gone from a little pod down in Tasmania, obviously a very important sort of group of people, and now it's spread to the mainland, and then it's spread up through to North Queensland, and it's also then, I suppose, spread overseas to, we've got quite a large amount of interest overseas. And this has all happened in a couple of years, so we're pretty mindful that we don't have a huge number of staff. We are a small family-owned, Australian-owned business, but Be Complete is the name of our brand for our horses and our dogs, and that's Be-Complete. And then obviously with a bit of a play on words, when it came to the bee product, we called it B-E-E Complete. And look, it's just been one of those really interesting stories, I guess. A circular economy, preventing food waste. It shows it's 100% natural. We can use it in $1 million racehorse, and we can use it on the most important species in the world, which is obviously bees. So
that's
how we
awesome.
started.
That's awesome. Absolutely love it, John. So I've got lots and lots of questions. We'll get stuck into sort of with the bees and so forth, and I've got a bucket here to open up and check it out. So what benefits are we seeing with horses, just out of interest?
So again, a myriad of. So we look at it as a complete wellbeing product. There's a lot of synthetic products on the marketplace. When you go into a horse supplement market, there's hundreds, literally, and it's so confusing for horse owners. It's we're a big believer of keeping things simple, but also making sure they work. We're big believers in that. Sometimes simple is better. So I've had feedback in the horses from uncontrollable horses with anxiety, not being able to get into the barriers. Now, again, I'll talk about the benefits of the product later, but the dopamine and the serotonin, which naturally occur in the skin of the bananas, which is, our product is the whole green banana. It's not just the pulp. Yes. It's actually the skin, the stems, and the pulp. So through the research, we found out that that dopamine and serotonin naturally occur in the skin, and it has a natural calming agent, and anything you can do to reduce oxidative stress is going to be beneficial to, reducing ulcerations, but also it can help, that calming effect. So people who couldn't get the horses into barriers, all of a sudden put them on our product, and they were calmer, and they were not doughy, they were just more focused, and they were performing once they were into the barriers. And then the coat health, some of these horses just literally glow once they've been on the product. And with race horses, and I'm not a racehorse expert either, or a canine expert. I have a horse, I have a dog. I don't have a hive, but all of these sort of learnings that we've taken has all been coming back from the industry. So coat health, gut health, and basically overall temperament are the three sort of real determining factors. And then in the greyhounds, it's the same sort of thing. It helps with they get a bit anxious and they get watery stools, so it helps firming up their stools. It helps with the inflammation of the joints after they've competed. The recovery seemed to be better. I mean, I had a guy who's been a greyhound trainer for forever, and he basically said to me, "Look, I haven't changed my diet in 13 years. I'm not going to start doing it now." And I said, "Look, you got nothing to lose. Take one. If it works, great. If you're going to put it in the bin, just make sure I've got my back turned before you do it, because that would be quite upsetting.
Yes.
And this guy now orders, we weren't making 9 kilo buckets up until, now he has all his dogs on it. And he just can't believe the results. So the feedback has just been phenomenal on the horses and the dogs. And again, the bees just fits in beautifully with our story, because we talk about a circular economy. We talk about looking after the environment. If it's sensitive enough, like I said, for $1 million racehorse, you know that it's a natural product. There's nothing else that goes into it. We're feed safe for credit.
How's it made, John? How's it made?
Yeah. So basically, we built our factory. So it's a feed safe accredited factory. So we've got our HACCP. It's a beautiful factory. We sort of didn't spare any expense when we were putting it together. And essentially, it's taking the green bananas from the farms. So my business owner, he's got, we've both been in the industry forever. So we've got a wonderful network of growers and our own farm. And we basically take a green banana, we wash them, we then slice them, then we then dry them, then we then mill them. So it takes a long time to get to that point, but it's a simple, safe process of taking a green banana and turning it into a dehydrated product that can be traveling all over the world without the cost of all the moisture that would normally typically be in a banana, which is, let's face it, 85-90% moisture. So refining it, reducing it, and drying it, and then milling it. And the milling it, like I said, with the horses, we have it as a fine muesli. For the canines, it's a finer muesli again, because they don't like the stringy bits because of their palate preferences. And then when the bees, we actually mill it to a very fine powder.
Interesting. And so a question on the bananas. So is a green banana more nutritious than a ripe banana?
They're actually a little bit different from one another, and that's probably the thing that we spend a fair bit of time trying to educate people about, is that it's a bit like chalk and cheese. So essentially a ripe banana, as you can imagine, it's when the carbohydrates have started, they've started to convert the carbohydrates to sugars, whereas we're doing that before that conversion happens. So the sugar content is very, very low, which in some respects sort of goes against what you'd expect in the bee industry, because bees being attracted to the sugary products. This is more about the carbohydrates, and it's more about the polyphenols and the flavonoids, and it's also more about the dopamine and the serotonin. And again, our learning's always evolving. I said, when we're not experts in this space, the more you read, the more you learn, the more you trial it in the field, it just becomes abundantly clear that it's not actually the sugar content, it's the other attributes, the aminos and the amines and the polyphenol, sorry, but also the dopamine and the serotonin, and we found that in some of the research papers that we were doing too. So yeah.
That's amazing. Now I've got a bucket here in front of me that I've had it for a little while and I haven't even opened it yet. So I'm looking forward now. It's interesting. So I'll be able to describe the smells and everything. So as far as that's obviously a nice powder. It's quite like nice and fine. And just sort of describing that now. I'm gonna taste a bit.
Yeah, go for it. Look, I say to people, and this is quite the unique part about it, it's 100% natural, right, Ben? So
yes.
When I go into a store, whether it be for a bee, dog, or a horse, I'll sit there and eat it. And I can tell you quite now that we have a lot of people who actually spread our muesli on their own porridges.
Yes.
And again, it's not like gut health for humans is certainly not an unknown space as well. Like green bananas, if you look at some of the southern provinces of India, where they've got a huge part of green bananas in their daily diet, that actually does correlate to the fact that they've got some of the lowest rates of gastric cancers in the world. And look, I can't sit there and say 100%, with confidence, but the correlation is just too keen when you look at the low rates of a place like the southern provinces of India compared to the Asian countries where they've got high rice diets. We are what we eat. So the human side of it, there's plenty of research about green bananas being particularly good for humans. I read a paper just last week that was actually quite a really good paper about helping reduce the risk of cancers. Now,
Wow.
again, we don't say anything about that in anything that we do because we're only a small family business. We can't spend the $20 million to prove that.
Yes.
But it all makes perfect sense, because when you look at what the product's made up of, it does have antioxygenics, it does have antioxidants that are higher than predominant number of products on the marketplace. The polyphenol, the flavonoids, the dopamine, the serotonin, they all help reduce oxidative stress. And I think most people would acknowledge nowadays that that is one of the things that can lead to some of those ailments that people suffer. I mean, I had a guy in Canada who was putting it on his own, and he was actually a canola field. He grew canola, and he'd had gut issues for 10 years, and he just started eating it on his own accord. We obviously tell people not to eat it because we're only feed safe accredited, not food safe at the moment.
Yeah.
But that could potentially change very soon. And after 10 years of constant gastrointestinal issues, could not believe it after 6 days that he had actually lost a lot of the symptoms that he was having as an individual. So that bodes well for the future too.
Oh, that's amazing. And I should mention for the listeners, that's the taste of it's quite subtle. Like, I envisioned being a bit more, I guess, punchy, robust, but it's a nice, almost sort of, I was a chef by trade, so bee stem flour or chickpea flour.
Yep.
It's got that sort of, same but different, but it's actually kind of subtle, because I envisioned, being a little bit more punchy would probably be that green, but a green banana as being almost astringent.
Well, put it this way, if you've ever stunk your teeth into a green banana, it's not the most pleasant experience. So, but we've certainly, a lot of people, I guess, would have, it'd be like an oaty flavor is what a lot of people describe it. It is quite subtle. It's certainly not a green. You'd expect to open up the lid and smell bananas jumping out of you, but it's probably couldn't be further from that. It's more like an oaty, nutty sort of flavor. And then when it comes to how people use it in the bee industry, we've had a lot of different had a lot of different people report how they use it, which again for us is hard, because we would love to be able to tell everyone exactly how some people use it, but there has been a bit of variation. So, there's been discussions about open feeding, and the first trials we did was actually through open feeding, and again, it disappeared within 3 days of open feeding it. But I think there's a bit of a push within the industry to move, in some regards into in-hive feeding. So where we've seen a lot of real strong benefits has been people who have been sprinkling over the top of their frames rather than actually open feeding it. But again, each their own. It's really been quite interesting as to how the industry looks at any supplementation, to be perfectly honest, because again, not from the industry, I'm sort of learning everything as fast as I can. But so the in-hive feeding has been really, really successful. The disease pressures and those sort of things, and trying to do less open feeding. It seems to be a trend that's coming from the States, from what I can gather. When I looked at some of the papers that I've read, if you're keeping it in hive feeding, then there is less transitioning from hive to hive. And but again, the feedback was it works both ways. We've done the open feeding trials in the bottom of feeding containers, and they are taking it back to their hives, and certainly the same thing with sprinkling across the top of the frames. And then again, I probably haven't explained that 100% correctly, because I'm sure Jake, who he does it a slightly different way again, and he was in, he actually does it in a more scientific manner than what I've just described. But it's been really interesting to learn that way.
So it's important, John, that it's actually not a pollen supplement. It's an extra that we feed the bees.
Yeah, well, the jury's still out, to be honest, Ben. Okay. There's some of if I look at a lot of people are looking at supplementation for off seasons. There's been a lot of people suggesting that this should be done all year round. There are some people who will do it in the lead up to the season. I've got to admit, there's been a number of different trains of thought as to how to do it and when to do it, and that's what we're still working on. But the guys who we know are having success, they are using it all year round. They are doing in-hive feeding, but typically, they're they're trying to strengthen these colonies before they go out to battle, I guess. So
yeah, okay. That's very interesting. Because I was talking to Ben Joyce at New Plus, but now I'm going to put New Plus in the show notes because that's the distributor. So if you're a beekeeper and you want to try this product, go to newplus.com.au. It's NUPLAS, right? But I'll put it in the show notes so people can find it. But yeah, so he was talking to him, and I was under the impression when I first heard about the product and that it was a pollen supplement, but he was sort of saying it's actually another supplement to actually feed the bees, and we were talking about that and the great success that beekeepers are having, especially probably more if you're a beekeeper on more monofloral type crops where there is a lack of nutrition, or who knows, if you're a hobbyist beekeeper. So for those listeners, and something's happened to your hive, it could be, it's got good diversity of pollen and things, that something's happening in your hive, it's maybe queenless, to give it a little bit of a boost. So definitely, and I'm looking forward to trying it to actually see. So last question, John, what about any negative aspects? Have you said, like, say, maybe African small hive beetle would be one that's sort of the first one? Are they attracted to that, or do we know much about it, or is there any other issues? Can it go mold in the hive or anything like that?
No, look, I can be really clear with all your listeners. I have heard nothing but good feedback. Again, New Plus we took on as a distributor because, again, we're only a small team and we didn't want to be playing in the space where the experts are better at handling all those inquiries, and they've got a greater number of beekeepers that they can refer to. We sell it online, and I guess, Ben, our online sales are quite phenomenal because. Again, we've done no marketing. The people who've bought it, they all repeat purchase, which is wonderful. So we've got people who start on their little 3 kilo on our online store, and then they go to the 11 kilo, and then they buy 3 of the 11 kilos. So it's sort of one of those things that New Plus are a distributor. They have the product available. We always have the product available. We always ensure that when we bring a product to market that we're not going to let people down. But yeah, the supplementation, going back to the supplementation and the feed, it is interesting. It really is interesting because, if I look at the papers that came from Korea, they talk about, being a substitute potentially for pollen. But then when we first did this, we were probably looking just more at the ability to reduce, fungal chalk root. It was really kicking the hives into some sort of hygienic activity, and those hives that were struggling with chalk root within days and weeks were transformed. So, but then when we started doing more research, it definitely started to show that there was potentially a lot more attributes that we didn't know about. So yeah, it's been kind of cool.
It's absolutely awesome. So your website for people wanting to check it out is bananafeedsaustralia.com.
Yep. That's so there's no AU. bananafeedsaustralia.com, and then /shop if you want to go and have a look at it in our shop. But also New Plus, like I said, we partner with distributors. That's what we do with our equine products. So we use some big national distributors for us, Air, Eastern's distributors, and also Nature's Harvest in South Australia. And when it came to the bees, we wanted to make sure that we had the right distribution network. So New Plus out there at Swan Hill, Ben Joyce is certainly a good person to get in contact with. And for those who just want to go and give it a buy and try, then we've obviously got our online store as well too, Ben.
That's awesome. Well, John, thank you so much for your time. And it's absolutely fantastic to see an Australian-made product that's sustainably produced and absolutely excited. I'm excited to use it. So, so for those listeners, I'll keep you posted. I'll put on my socials that I'm giving it a crack, and I'll really look forward to it. Very exciting.
Awesome. No, look, it's been a pleasure, Ben, and really appreciate you reaching out. And if any listeners have got any inquiries, I think pretty much my mobile number's on the back of every single packaging that we ever produce, which I don't know whether it's a good idea, but get phone calls all sorts of weird hours of the night. But no, yes. Look, by all means, we're here to help anyone. So, which is a small family-owned business that are doing something pretty unique in the world, to be honest. And we've had a lot of support from the government. I've got to be honest. The Department of Treasury and Investment in Queensland have certainly helped us open up some of the export markets. But it's just us, and we're a small team. So feel free to reach out to us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks, Ben.
Take
See you,
care.
bud.
Bye.
Ciao.